In this sketch, I've extracted out the information about the circles into objects, and the sketch pretty much still runs the same. There's a circle that follows the mouse and a target circle that, in the aim of this small game, is that the aim is to move over the target circle and have it register that and then move to a new position. Now, I haven't implemented the collision detection yet between the circle objects. I'm going to show how to do that, but first let me just talk through how the code is working. So before I had a whole lot of variables at the top, mouse X, mouse Y, target mouse X, target mouse Y, and so on. And what I've done is created a circle object which stores all of that information. So I've got the keyword class, the name of my class circle, and then curly brackets, and then inside the curly brackets all of this information is defining the class. So there are these variables: an X, Y position, a radius, the color it is normally, then the color it is if it's highlighted, and a Boolean value whether it is currently highlighted or not. I've got a constructor method for the class which takes an X, Y, and a radius as float values, and then stores that internally, and then it's calling its own function pick new color to pick a random color for the circle on the first time through. So I set up my sketch, and then I initialize two circle objects using the class that I just created. So mouse circle becomes a new circle with x0, y0, and radius 10, and target circle becomes a new circle with a random width, a random height, and a radius of 50. Now these two variables are just stored like a normal variable that I declare at the top of the sketch, so I can use them anywhere in my processing sketch. So here in the draw function, after I clear the background and draw the points to the screen, I can update my mouse circle with the new XY position, and then display the target circle and display the mouse circle. I've still got the same basic logic from before to sort of see whether the circles have been touching long enough, but I'm not actually doing any calculations to check that yet because I haven't implemented the collision detection. Let's take a look at these update and display functions in the circle object. You can see even though I've got a mouse circle and a target circle, they're both calling this display object, but they're displaying in different places when they are drawn, and that's because the little blue circle here has its own XY position, and the green circle has a separate XY position which are stored inside the circle object. In the circle class, the update function just takes the X and Y that are passed to it and updates the internal values. And the display function, first it checks whether it's highlighted and chooses whether or not to use the highlight color based on that, and then it just draws an ellipse at the XY position with the specified radius. Let's think about how to implement collision detection in this class. So in these little objects, I've got my target object and the objects that's following the mouse. So I'll call this mouse circle and target circle. And each one has the same few fields. It's got an X, a Y position, it's got a radius and a color and so on. And each one has its own, so this also has an X and a Y, a radius and a color and so on. And then they also have these methods that I just showed. So they've got a display method and then an update method that they both have in common. Now what I want to do is add a new method to these circle objects, which I'm going to call is touching. And this is going to be the method that holds my collision detection code. Let's look at how I would implement it. basically what I want to be able to say in the draw loop is, after I've updated the mouse circle, what I want to say is if the mouse circle is touching the target circle, then record that they're touching, update the number of frames that it has been touching for, and so on. Let's look at how we implement that as a method on the circle class. So down here underneath the display method, I'm going to create a new method called isTouching. So determine So I'm just going to determine whether this circle is touching another one. Now this method is going to return true if they are touching, false otherwise. Excuse my appalling typing. Now to save some time, I'm just going to paste this in and talk through the code. So this method is going to return a Boolean. So we don't use void at the start, we say it returns a Boolean. This is the name of the method, isTouching, and the argument it takes is another circle. So I can call this method on either of my circle objects and just pass it the other circle that I want to check against as the argument. The logic works much the same as it did previously. Firstly, I find out the distance between this xy, the xy of the object that I'm calling it on, and the xy of the other circle that I've passed in as an argument. Again, using the built-in processing dist function. Then I figure out the touching distance, similar to the way I did before, by looking at the radius of the object that I'm calling it on with the radius of the other circle that I've passed in as an argument. And I just return whether the distance between the two circles is less than or equal to the touching distance. And that's it. So if I switch back to my sketch, this method is going to return true if I call it on a circle object that has a radius of 10 with an argument of another circle object that has a radius of, let's say, 30. It's going to return true if these radiuses added together is less than the total distance between them. So that's the total distance, and if it's closer than that, then they must be overlapping. So here I can use that in the if statement here, and if that is true, what I can do is say, okay, well, record that, and I can do that as I did before by updating the value of my frames touching variable. So they've been touching for one more frame than they were previously. And I can indicate visually to the user that they are touching by setting the highlight on them. So I can say mouse circle dot is highlighted equals true. Otherwise, it's not going to be highlighted. Equals false. So I believe that if I run this code, it should visually change when they are touching. So you can see there the mouse circle is highlighting when I touch the other one. So the collision detection is working. Now the other thing I want to do is update the target circle location once I've scored a point. So if the frames it's been touching for is more than the frames you need for a point, then we need to move the target circle to a new location. And one of the nice things about if you do this thing of creating methods on your objects that you can use again in different ways is you can do precisely that. You can use the methods for different things. So here where I'm updating the position of the mouse circle, I'm using the update function. Now I'm calling that on the mouse circle, but there's nothing to stop me calling the same method on the target circle. So just like the mouse circle, the target circle has this update function which works in exactly the same way. You just pass an X and a Y value. And instead of passing a specific XY value, I can put in a random XY value. So I can say random width, random height, and it's going to move to a new random position. And I also made a method in the class to pick a new color just at random as well. So if I pick a new color for the target circle each time it changes, that's just going to look a little bit more interesting. So now when we score a point, the target circle moves to a new position. So the code is working pretty much the same as before. You may question why it was, necessary to do all of this work of creating a new class and everything. One reason I hope you'll agree is it makes the code in the main part of the function a lot easier to understand. Like our draw loop now is quite easy to read through, and when you read things like mouse circle is touching target circle, if mouse circle is touching target circle, that's a lot easier to understand than what we were doing before. Also, because we've created this, this object now, it becomes a lot easier to do something like adding a second circle. So say I wanted to make the game more challenging by adding 2 targets instead of just 1, I could say create a second target circle object, give that a random width and position, and here I could say if the mouse circle is touching the target circle, or if the mouse circle is touching second target circle, so that the user can touch either one. And I could move the target circle and the second target circle whenever a point's scored. I've left a bracket off. Oh. And I've misspelt the variable. Circle, not circle. Oh, and I've forgotten to draw the circle. Target circle display. Second target circle display. Now I have 2 targets and I can move either one and they both update. And that wasn't too much work to add that second target. It's still a little cumbersome because we're just using different variable names to have our different our 2 target circles, and probably what you would want to do is use an array or an array list if you wanted any more than that. That would be a better way to do it. But still, I think this shows how using the class makes it easier to modify and extend your code.